Hello, everyone, and welcome to our general overview of fellowship session here in the week before spring break. And I appreciate you taking time out for this during what is a very busy time for almost every student. So I'm Christine Valenza-Shin. I'm the interim executive director for Beyond Barnard, and it's my pleasure to be here today to give you an overview of fellowships in general and some of the ways that Beyond Barnard works with you and supports that process. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through the presentation and leave some time at the end for questions. So show and excellent. So we started. Our plan for the day is throw me a thumbs up, make sure that my screen is actually sharing. Okay, great. Thanks. So we'll take a look at what are fellowships. It's an interesting term and can mean many different things, and then specifically Beyond Barnard and the resources we offer around fellowships. And then there are many, many fellowships, so we're going to look at some highlighted ones by various categories. And then again, continuing, to make generalizations across different types of fellowships, look at some of the general application criteria, things that a lot of fellowships have in common. Give you a little preview or a link to our competitive fellowships database, which helps you explore the many, many fellowships that are out there. A quick overview of application materials and a little preview again of the sort of ideal timeline for all of this. So let's go ahead. Fellowships, basically, it's hard to define because they are a variety of opportunities and supports to help you develop your academic and professional interests. And very often when you are awarded a fellowship, it's not only that tangible support towards your academic goals, your professional goals, research, all of these various things that can support, but you're also joining a cohort, and that's where this networking, just a tremendous networking opportunity. You become part of the cohort of the fellowship you're part of. And so you're not only sort of part of that group at the time, but then you become connected to all of the people who have had the fellowship in the past and continue to have that support and connection. It's a broad term that covers a wide range of funded experiences, and that's the key word. It's funded experience. And so for the most part, these are competitive processes of varying levels of competition and numbers of people who apply, and what you are applying for. And if you do receive the fellowship, you are receiving some sort of funded experience. Deadlines are at least a year in advance, and there are both what are called national deadlines, or the fellowship's actual deadline, but then very often for some of the more prestigious and well-known fellowships, there is an internal process whereby Barnard College has to either evaluates or coaches or literally has to endorse you. And so that in itself, it can be a separate process. And so that comes up even earlier. So a lot of fellowships is about planning, thinking ahead, understanding the timelines, and then asking for the support you need to put together a strong application along a timeline that works and gives you plenty of time to develop the strongest application possible. So in general, we encourage people, especially after this introductory session, to contact Beyond Barnard as early as possible in your college career, or in your interest in a particular fellowship, to discuss your interest and candidacy. Even if that initial meeting, you find out, oh, I can't really do anything about this for a year because the fellowship isn't even open yet, or the application isn't open yet. Still, it's helpful to talk in general terms about what you're interested in and what possibilities are out there for you. So there's all sorts of different things that fellowships support. This graphic gives the broad categories across the top. So very often what you are granted is support of educational costs, or it could be an international experience for travel or study or research. And then research itself is its category, and then leadership and professional development. So those are sort of broad categories. Those are the various different things that can be supported. Sometimes it's combinations of those. And then we listed a variety of fellowships by name that tend to fall into one of these categories more than the others. This is a good time to point that we will be sending you a copy of the PowerPoint as well as the recording, so you don't need to be furiously screenshotting or writing all of these down. But we want to give just sort of an overview and start to get you familiar with some of the different names. Very often at this point, people might have heard of Fulbright and Rhodes and some of the more, famous and prestigious and longer. Maybe they've been around longer, but you can see from the different names that are listed here, there's all sorts. They're very often named after a person. Sometimes they're named after location, the New York City Urban Fellows, UK Summer Institute, there's a whole variety. So, but this will give you some sense of what can be supported and the many fellowships that support these. Then let's take a little look at beyond Barnard and fellowships. We support in sort of 4 key areas. So one of the first steps is this idea of identifying and then applying to nationally competitive scholarships. So some scholarships, some fellowships are more localized, more specific by subject area. And I would say we even have, a fairly steady stream of students who find out about a fellowship we may never have heard of, an opportunity we've never heard of. And so then they bring it to us and we can help there. But we certainly play a strong role in these various fellowships that we're mentioning today and looking at in terms of supporting you and guiding you in how to develop. First of all, identify what would be a good match for you and then developing your materials from there. Right? So that's, on the other side. Many of these applications, some of them are fairly straightforward and look relatively similar to, say, a graduate school application, but many of them have a lot of different moving parts. We'll look at some of the basic things they all have in common, and they can have customized essays and various other components. Our goal is to help you identify what's a good fit and then start to develop the materials and refine the materials. That can include interview prep, working with your personal statements, even sort of talking through who should you ask for, recommendations, and the various other components. We do this through individual advising sessions, as well as workshops and events. We do these overviews, and then we'll do specific sessions on specific fellowships. One of our favorite programming that we've started to build out over the last couple of years. Sometimes a fellowship organization will want to come directly to Barnard and give a presentation, and especially if it's a relatively new opportunity, or they are seeking, specific, trying to expand who they appeal to apply. So I remember a couple of years back. Well, yeah, it's getting so long. When you say pre-COVID, that's 3 years ago now. But the Schwartzman Fellowship, which is relatively new, came and gave a presentation and was interested in making personal contact with students. But we also have been tracking more carefully and bringing back our many alumni who've received fellowships over the years and putting them on panels and other types of workshops and guidance. So these are the different ways that we work, and we also coordinate on the nationally competitive things like the Rhodes and the Truman and the Fulbright. We work together in some cases, with the Committee on Honors out of the Dean of Studies office to go through that process. So I want to give just a little bit of an idea of sort of the various highlighted fellowships. We can't cover all of them, but we wanted to pull some out from various categories and take a look to sort of understand the breadth and depth of what's out there that you might be interested in. We have a Gaither Juniors. One fellowship is the Gaither Junior Fellows program. And this, we want to give you sort of examples of different ways these work. So in this case, you work for a year with a senior fellow in one of the program areas of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And this can involve being a research assistant for various senior Carnegie associates in a variety of roles, as you can see, from around the world on a range of international affairs. So again, there's this, in this case, it's sort of an umbrella program that has a lot of variation within it, and you can identify specific areas of interest to you. The critical language scholarship is exactly what it sounds like. This comes from at least originally from the U.S. Department of Defense, and it's making sure that we are developing scholars and experts in critical languages. And so this could be anything from a number of languages are deemed critical. It tends to be an area where it's both of great international importance, but also potentially a shortage of, not that many people study it. So it could be Arabic, it could be various forms of Chinese, it could be really all sorts of languages. And it's an immersive 10-week summer program, and you can apply either as an undergraduate or graduate. So for each of these highlighted fellowships, you'll see there's different variations on what they support and when you can apply. The Fulbright U.S. Student Program, which is one of the steadiest, sort of most popular fellowships for Barnard students to apply to, and we've had tremendous success, basically funds a year abroad once you graduate, and there's a research program, a teaching program, and also a limited opportunity to also obtain a master's degree. So again, you can look into the Fulbright system. It's a large number of programs, and choose the one that most fits with your aims and ambitions, and then go through that application process. You can apply either as a senior or a recent grad, and this is a good example of one that requires a campus evaluation, and there's an interview process that takes place internally. So the initial deadline is the very beginning of September, and then we evaluate and provide support on your application for the actual Fulbright Association's deadline, which comes in October. A couple others. There's a number of fellowships that are, as I just mentioned, are just for seniors and recent grads, but there are also many opportunities for sophomores and juniors. The Truman Scholarship, where the deadline is in January. This is funding for a master's degree for people planning a career in public service, and with a record of leadership and change agents. This is one of the most competitive fellowships out there, and we're extremely excited to have a finalist this year. A Barnard, we're only allowed to nominate up to 4 students, and one of those 4 has been invited as a finalist to a final round of interviews, and we're very excited about that. You apply as a junior, and then eventually you don't have to go to graduate school right away, but when you are ready to go to graduate school in a graduate school program related to public service, that's when the money is provided. Goldwater, it covers undergraduates pursuing a career in STEM research, and is targeted at sophomores or juniors. And this is where the competitiveness comes in. It requires a minimum 3.0, but the average is much higher, and past current research experience is expected. So those of you who are in STEM, who might have taken part in our Summer Research Institute or other types of research experiences, can be really strong candidates for that, and can be granted up to $7,500 annually if you receive one of these scholarships. And then the National Science Foundation has a graduate research fellowship program. And this looks more at, you apply early, but this can help support your MA, PhD in a STEM field, and is up to $44,000 a year for up to 3 years. So you can see here again that there's a variety of opportunities out there for a variety of backgrounds, majors, and future goals. So. And there's a number of these that support summer research, right? Leadership Alliance, National Science Foundation, research experience for undergrads. So Fulbright has a UK Summer Institute. So again, these come up under different organizations. There are different variations. And so if you're looking for something specifically for a summer as opposed to a full year or a graduate school level funding, this can be helpful. All of these, when you do get the PowerPoint, have links, but you also can obviously look up any of these and go directly to the website and learn more about them. More, the Knight Hennessy. These are a couple of here. These first two, Knight Hennessy and then the UK Ireland Awards, give financial support for studying at a specific institution. So Knight Hennessy focuses on Stanford University. And then there's a number of United Kingdom and Ireland awards, including the Rhodes, the Marshall, the Mitchell, and the Gates. And I asked my colleagues about this, forgot to change this. The campus deadline actually is a little bit later. It's like the Fulbright, it's in early September. So making that correction. And again, this is a funding of graduate degree at different universities. Right. Again, this is another one where you're going to apply as a senior or a recent grad. And then the Beinecke Scholarship, we also have a finalist in the pipeline for that. Funds a master's or PhD program specifically for students interested in pursuing a career in research in the humanities or social sciences. And again, you apply as a junior and campus nomination. So there's a whole variety here. One of the most important things we emphasize both individually and when we talk to you as a group, as we are today, is that the process, that fellowships lead to fellowships. So we encourage people to apply to all sorts of funded programs, whether it's here at Beyond Barnard through the Beyond Barnard internship program, or Laidlaw or Lyman, or some of the other Growing the Arts, some of the other programs that are funded directly here at Barnard. And then some of these other ones that I've mentioned over the last couple of slides that are geared towards current sophomores and current juniors. All of those, the process of applying to fellowships is very helpful. You get a lot out of the process that helps you develop relationships with faculty, faculty mentors, faculty recommenders, gets you thinking about yourself as a researcher or a teacher or a future graduate student. All of that is really valuable, even if you don't end up being awarded the fellowship. But if you are awarded a smaller funding opportunity, that becomes part of your resume and helps to increase your chances of getting some of these further along, more prestigious, more competitive fellowships that come up later. So it's a process, and we encourage everyone to not put up any self barriers and think, what's out there? What do I want to do? Where are the fellowships? Where is the financial support to help me achieve some of those goals? So now let's take a look at some of the general application criteria. What do all of these have in common? All right. So again, depending on the focus of it, there are different things that are required. But in general, broad criteria include academic excellence. Come back to that in a minute. It's not just about your GPA. Community engagement and leadership, communication skills, and fit, right? They're looking for, are you a good fit for this? Academic excellence. I mean, as you look at individual fellowships, many of them will mention a specific minimum GPA or an average GPA, much the way, a law school or medical schools, or various other graduate schools might have those criteria. But beyond the number, beyond the GPA, what else makes you stand out? And that's where, even if you're not going for a research fellowship, research you've done as part of a class or as part of another cohort shows a level of engagement in academics that's really, really important. And then internships as well. They, at Barnard, we don't specifically do, you don't get academic credit for internships, but internships that you have pursued around your interests that may be connected directly or indirectly to your academic work. Being able to talk about those, write about your research questions, your internship experiences, connect them to your overall academic and professional growth. That's a really important way of sort of demonstrating the importance of really your intellectual journey. So academic excellence, just to reiterate, it's not just about a number, it's about a larger approach, being able to, share what your interests are and how the fellowship potentially fits into that. Community engagement and leadership is also, very often asked for and part of, part of the criteria. Some emphasize it more than others and in different ways. But in general, in large organizations or small, in sort of formal leadership roles or not, it's being able to speak about and demonstrate where you've initiated, informed, influenced, or implemented various things. So definitely a component and something you'll be asked to share information about and write about. Which brings us to communication skills. All applications have a written component, and many of them include an interview. Sometimes, often the interview comes at a later stage, but you need to not only through the application process, sort of demonstrate your ability to communicate effectively in written form, and then in an interview, but also other demonstrations of past, past and current communication. So if you've participated in or presented at a conference, if you've published your work or been a co-author on a study, those also become part of that overall communication of your qualifications. And then last, but definitely not least in importance, is being able to show how your trajectory and goals align with the granting institution and their mission. And so part of that goes back to the beginning of what I was saying that we can help you with, and we encourage you to do, which is to look at the world of fellowships, look at the missions and what their intention is and why these were developed in the first place. And then how does that align with things that you want to do? Or you can flip that and your conversation with yourself or with your various support systems, and specifically with us, what are your goals? What are you interested in exploring and pursuing? And then how, where are the fellowships? Where are the scholarships and the other funded experiences that can help support that? And then, of course, how do you write about that and speak about that to show that you're a good fit? So those are definitely all part of the selection criteria. When you look into individual fellowships, you'll get much more information about the specifics on these, but this is definitely something all fellowships have in common across the board. Mentioned a couple things about application materials. Almost every fellowship, and this is true, graduate school applications in general, there's definitely some overlap there, require what's called a personal statement. It's called different things. Sometimes it's called a statement of purpose or a statement of academic purpose. It can have different names, but the basic idea is telling, as it says at the bottom here, it's telling your story. And it's not so much the story of your life as it is the story of your intellectual and professional journey. What's interesting to you, what's compelling to you, what have you studied, how is that connected to what you would like to do, as a career, what you would like to do as an advocate or somebody interested in, science, public service, law, etc. And so the personal statement is very important, and a well-crafted statement it's a process. It will take many months. So it's probably, whenever we meet with people ahead of the deadline, it's one of the first things we'll ask about is, what are you thinking about? Where are you at in your process? And then working with you to make sure that you're evolving that, getting feedback from a variety of sources, including ourselves, and really developing that story. And then another important component is recommendation letters. Depending on the fellowship, I think the Rhodes famously asks for, I want to say 8 or 10 recommenders. Truman asks for 3 recommenders, but they have to speak to specific things. So some of these are quite detailed and specific. Others are more general and are looking, generally for 2 or 3 academic references from faculty members or professors, but some specify and in some cases require professional recommendations from people you might have worked with or done an internship, worked with on an internship. So again, there's variety, but the fundamental, sort of application materials include recommendation letters. And then some of the other things you're familiar with, I'm sure, from the process of applying to college. And if any of you are looking ahead to applying to graduate school or 4+1 pathway here at Barnard, transcripts and other aspects to the application process. I want to talk a little bit about our competitive fellowships database. This is on our website and the slides link to it. I'm not going to follow the link at this juncture, but basically what it looks like this is a screenshot, and you can see the menu along the left-hand side. You can search the fellowships by keyword, program type, a discipline. You could put in your major, you could put in your degree, you could put in where you want to go. You can fill in any of those and then, hit return, and you'll get a variety of fellowships that come up. So a couple of here, Beinecke, and so we have sort of some basic information, and then you can click through to for more details on our website, and then most of them give a link to the external website for the particular fellowship. Columbia has a fellowships database that is open to you all as well. There's obviously going to be some overlap, but some distinctive programs as well. And we are adding to this on a regular basis. And if you, in your exploration, come across a fellowship that isn't in our database, but you think we should know about, or that you're interested in pursuing, that's part of how we keep it dynamic. So yeah, and you here on how to browse different categories. Okay. So some application, sorry, I sort of jumped ahead. Oh, I know, the application materials, I moved that under general application criteria. So now we're actually jumping ahead to the ideal application timeline. So in the prior academic year or semester to the deadline, whether it's the campus deadline, you have to pay attention whether there's a separate campus deadline versus the national, in most cases, deadline. So up to a year or semester in advance, you're looking to gain experience in the area you're looking into. So again, looking carefully at what the fellowship requires, what they're looking for. And if you already have that on your resume as part of your experience, great. If not, there's still plenty of time to sort of add that. You want to create a network, and this is basically reaching out to people for information and advice. So taking a look through Barnard Connect here at Beyond Barnard or LinkedIn to find alumni who've had the fellowship or who have a similar trajectory to you. It's connecting with us here at Beyond Barnard. It's very important connecting with professors, and an awful lot of the professors at Barnard and Columbia will have themselves been fellowships recipients of a variety of opportunities. So that can be really helpful to talk to them about a specific program or their experience in general. You're connecting with them not just to gather information and advice, but then these professors could potentially become your letter writers as well. And then, Beyond Barnard, key part of your network in terms of connecting with us and letting us know what you're interested in, and if you're interested in one that requires a campus nomination. 2 to 6 months before the deadline, you're getting more specific. You've done your exploration. You're sure that this is a fellowship you want to apply to. You can have another meeting with us to talk more about your interest and the status of your application, how you're doing on drawing things together. You want to start drafting the application material, especially the more time-consuming parts, contact potential letter writers, and then how far in advance do you start your app? So then there. So most applications open at a certain point, and so you can go onto the website, you can create an account and go through that sort of preliminary process, and then begin building your application from there, and ultimately leading towards either we submit it or you submit it, right, depending on the fellowship. 1 to 2 months before the deadline, you definitely want to request those letters of reference. You want to give plenty of time for faculty members to plan when they can write it. And you can send them links to to specific information. Some of the websites for the various applications have specific directions for recommenders, so anything that you can find that helps support them, do that. You're going to be working on drafts of your various statements, your primary your personal statement, as well as supplementals, getting feedback both from Beyond Barnard, from professors, from writing fellows. And then in the case where there's an on-campus process, there'll be an institutional interview. So for instance, we interview all of the Fulbright candidates, as well as the UK things like the Rhodes and the Marshall, etc. 2 weeks before the deadline, things are getting close. You wanted, if you have an update of your application materials, you can share that with your letter writers, remind them of the deadline, meet with us here at Beyond Barnard to review your final or close to final drafts, request academic transcript if you need it. I would do that even earlier depending on timing. If you're waiting on grades, it's helpful to wait, a little bit longer so that you get the most complete picture, right? And finally, a week before the deadline, seek feedback, make any adjustments, and then where you always want to aim to submit as early as you can. I mean, some of you will follow this timeline and leave yourself a little bit more buffer, but you don't want to be having us, if we're required to do it, or you submitted it the actual day of the deadline. You want to give yourself the day before, just in case there's any technical hitches. So obviously you can hit send before then. So that gives you a fairly general overview of all of this. And I want to highlight that we have a overview of the Fulbright process specifically coming up on March 30th. You can find that on Handshake. That's going to be virtual, and it's going to be from 5:30 to 6:30, led by my colleague AJ Ehrenstein, and he'll delve into a little bit more details around Fulbright. And then we are hoping to offer some more specific sessions in April as well, but those are still pending. Okay. A couple of things you can do from here. We're going to be offering one-on-one fellowships advising starting in April. You should be able to schedule appointments for those when you come back from spring break. We've had limited availability over the last couple of months, but as Fulbright and other fellowships open up, we're expanding that. So keep it. So right at the moment, you're not going to find fellowships advising as a separate category, but you will following spring break, and then some appointments should open up in April. But in any case, if you have any specific questions, you can always email beyondbarnard@barnard.edu with your question, and it will get funneled to the correct person who can answer your question. So so with that, I will stop talking. I've been talking for a while. I'm going to stop sharing and encourage you all to ask any questions you might have. You can put it in the chat, or you could unmute and ask your question live.
Hello. Hi. So I had a couple small questions about Fulbright. So the first thing is, how many students approximately does Beyond Barnard endorse each year for Fulbright? And then you said there was a limited opportunity to do a master's through Fulbright. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I don't know a ton about that master's program, so I would encourage you to visit the site and also come to the Fulbright overview at the end to take a look at that. But if it's similar to other programs, it's you end up that's kind of what happens with like the Rhodes and the Knight Hennessy. You sort of simultaneously apply for graduate school and for the fellowship, and then the timing gets interesting, but then if you're awarded the fellowship, then you work out, the support from there. What was your first question?
Sorry, one sec, let me find it. Oh, how many students approximately does Beyond Barnard endorse for Fulbright?
So Fulbright does, as far as I know, does not limit how many we can endorse. So it's more of I would say it's more of a screening and evaluative process. So we will interview, I mean, we've interviewed as many as, I think we've had as many as, we average about between 30 and 40 students applying each year. And so basically anyone who's able to complete the application, which is fairly extensive, and make the deadline, which is very early in September, which is a tricky time of year. We then spend time interviewing, giving them sort of a practice interview to sort of delve into their application, and then give some suggestions and feedback from there. And then anyone who's ready to move ahead will go ahead and submit to Fulbright. And then from there, we leave it, then Fulbright takes over from there. And it's become a semifinalist is by region, and then some regions hold an additional interview and some don't. So so as far as I know, in the past we haven't had any. We're not limited to how many people. It's not an official endorsement, it's more of an evaluation process. That differs from something I think I mentioned, the Truman, where we are, in some cases you're only allowed to nominate a certain number of students, and so then that becomes the internal process becomes more about interviewing and us selecting, who we actually move forward, and
Got it. Okay, thank you.
other questions? Do students apply to multiple fellowships? Yes, absolutely. So many people will apply, even just thinking about our current seniors, we've had quite a few who've applied to Fulbright and Rhodes and Marshall, or people will apply to the Truman in their junior year, and then, something, other fellowships of interest later. But yeah, you're absolutely, and there is a certain amount of overlap. So there's an efficiency there where if the first time you do one, it's quite a lot of work. But once you've got that first fellowship application under your belt, then you can use a lot of the same information. I mean, obviously, just like when you apply for jobs, you need to customize it. You definitely need to speak to the mission and the goals, and tweak things accordingly. But that process, even recommenders and stuff can often be overlapped. Is the process the same for graduating seniors who will be applying as alumni? Yes, alumni. So if you graduate and then decide to apply to something like the Fulbright or to the Rhodes or to something, that allows you to apply at that point, the process is very similar. We still want you to follow, if there is an on-campus piece of it, we have you follow that, and similar support. And Beyond Barnard offers advising support to all of its graduates and alumni, regardless of what you're applying to. And so it's a similar. Are there any fellowships that are geared for those who are taking time to do a fellowship before an MD or an MD PhD? I don't know if it's that specific, but absolutely the ones that support research. If you're interested in obtaining another degree before you start the MD or the PhD, definitely those fellowships that supply that. But travel opportunities, teaching opportunities, research opportunities, they would all be open to you. There may well be specific ones geared towards that gap time between starting an MD or starting an MD PhD. I'm not aware of them off the top of my head, but I'm also not, I should have said this at the beginning, not an absolute expert at fellowships. I have, a fair amount of familiarity gained over the last few years of working closely with our fellowship advisor and our team as a whole. But they may well be out there, and I would recommend going to, well, two things. I think you could go to the database, the fellowships database, and put in your criteria, and also you could make an appointment with Dr. Dye, my colleague Amanda Dye, who does our pre-health advising, and she may be aware of specific fellowships or other opportunities that are geared towards that gap year. Other questions?
I have another quick one, if that's okay. So I'm interested in fellowships both for the purposes of graduate school, but also for research. And so I was wondering, how extensive does a research proposal for a fellowship, like a competitive fellowship, generally need to be?
Interesting question. I'll say up front, I don't know all the details. I think that you should look at the specific research opportunities. So for instance, the Goldwater that I mentioned, look at the criteria. And then if it's confusing from there, follow up with one of us here at Beyond Barnard, or probably it might even be better for your first stop to be a professor or faculty member in that discipline and talk to them. A lot of professors in the specific areas have a lot of experience with these grants and applications, and can give you sort of more detail on it. So I mean, I don't think they're, it's interesting. Not every fellowship is designed to some of them specifically are looking for people who are interested in research, say, or teaching, but you have to show an interest in that and possibly some experience, but you don't necessarily have to have, a fully envisioned research question and plan and area, so it really kind of varies. So,
Okay, thank you.
other questions from anybody? Follow-up questions, second questions? Well, I appreciate you, as I said at the beginning, appreciate you taking the time during a busy time of the semester with midterms coming up. Please feel free to follow up. As I mentioned, we've had limited availability for advising during this kind of quiet period between fellowship cycles, but we will be opening up some advising appointments, the availability to sign up for them shortly after spring break, and then actual appointments will be held during April. So keep your eye open for that. But as I said, definitely reach out if you've got questions in the meantime. Come to the Fulbright overview. And then I didn't put a link to it. I will add it to our reminder email, but we have a lot of YouTube videos of past information sessions about various fellowships. I was looking at it this morning, and I noticed that they aren't pulled together into a nice little playlist. So we're going to do that first and then send you the link to that, so it's a little bit easier to find them. So, but thank you again for your interest. We encourage you to explore and apply. You'll get a ton out of the process, as well as the possibility of some really significant funding for the things that you're most interested in. So
Thank you.
very much. Take care, everybody. Have a great spring break.